Hello, welcome to Fast Books. In this video, we are going to continue reading the first book of the Wheel of Time series. Let's get started with part 3. Chapter 17, Watchers and Hunters. After parting with Nynaeve, Rand heads for the inn's common room. There he finds a crowd gathered, listening to Tom recite stories from the Great Hunt of the Horn. Rand finds a spot to sit between Mat and Baron, and listens to Tom tell story after story. Eventually, the Gleeman puts down his harp and picks up his flute, signaling the end of stories for the evening. The first song is somewhat slow and melancholy, but the next ones are livelier. Rand and Baron quickly jump up to dance, leaving Mat to guard their things. As Rand dances his way around the room, he notices a scar-faced man who seems to be scowling at him. The man is quickly forgotten, however, when Rand finds his next dancing partner is Nynaeve. Rand stumbles through his steps with the wisdom, and as they change partners again she teases him that she had thought him a better dancer. He hardly has time to gather himself, though, as he has to dance with Moiraine next. When Rand gets the chance to dance with the Egwene, he acquits himself better, but still can't muster the will to speak to her since their earlier quarrel. The group dances on through the evening, and Rand manages to improve his poise when dancing with Nynaeve and Moiraine again. Around midnight, the Aes Sedai retires for the evening. Egwene hurries after her, but not without casting a worried glance toward Nynaeve. Nynaeve then joins in on one more dance before she too returns to her room, clearly believing she has outdone Moiraine in some way. Soon after, Tom begins putting his instruments away and Lan drops in to gather up the stragglers. Rand is surprised to hear Mat telling Lan about a scar-faced man that has been staring at him, but when he looks around he finds the man is no longer in the room. Lan says he may be a White Cloak spy, but that it's no concern to them. Rand says he's going to get some milk from the kitchen, and Lan warns him not to wander far, saying that there's something wrong. As Rand heads for his room sipping his milk, a Fade approaches from the end of the hall. The halfman asks Rand where the others are, but Rand is unable to either answer or run away. As the sound of boots running in the upstairs hallway is heard, the Fade swings its sword at Rand's head, then stops at the last moment, saying that Rand belongs to the Great Lord of the Dark. The Myrddraal vanishes from the hall just before Lan comes crashing down the stairs. Now the group must leave immediately, since their location has been found out. Tom and Nynaeve decide to go with them. As they make hurried preparations to depart, Moiraine cautions the innkeeper to disassociate himself from them as well as he can, but Master Fitch politely ignores her advice. As they mount their horses, Rand apologizes to Egwene for their argument, and it seems to make her feel better. When the group reaches the Caemlyn Gate to leave the city, the watchman must be persuaded, via soft words and hard currency, to open the gate. As soon as the gate begins to open, however, 5 White Cloaks appear, disputing the right of the party to leave the city at night. One of them is Dane Bornhold, the man Mat and Rand had encountered earlier, who fell victim to Mat's practical joke. When he recognizes Rand, he threatens to take the group to the White Cloak camp for questioning. Now Moiraine, who had stayed back out of the light at the approach of the children, moves forward to challenge Bornhold. She speaks in a thunderous voice that comes from all directions at once, asking if a White Cloak would dare to question her. Instantly recognizing her for an Aes Sedai, the man draws his sword and strikes at her, but she raises her staff and easily blocks the blade. Bornhold's sword is left bent and smoking and he is knocked back into his men. They all go down in a heap. Moiraine is now towering taller than the town's walls, and at Lan's urging the party charges past the downed men through the gate into the night. Some distance from the wall, Lan stops the group to wait for Moiraine, and Rand looks back to see her step over the town wall. The town's watchmen then slam shut and bar the gate behind them, despite the protests of the White Cloaks. As Lan starts moving everyone down the Caemlyn Road, Mat looks back to see flames lighting up the night sky over Baerlon, and Moiraine knows right away that it is the stag and lion that is burning. Some of the group question why they would not go back to help, but Moiraine points out that that could give the Dark One exactly what he wants. A few hours before dawn the group stops to rest for just an hour, then continues east down the road. Chapter 18, the Caemlyn Road. The first day on the road, Nynaeve ignores Moiraine completely, but then spends the next 2 days talking to the Aes Sedai about herbs. During rest stops, Lan studies the surrounding countryside as well as the road ahead of and behind the group. During dinner that third day, once again cold, just like breakfast and supper too, Egwene sighs that there was a time when she liked cheese. Lan chooses that moment to point out that there are Myrddraal and Trollocs following them, even if they haven't yet seen them. Then the blast of a horn is heard from somewhere behind them. Rand estimates no more than 10 miles, and everyone knows it is time to be moving again. But instead of leading them on, Lan gallops back toward their pursuers while Moiraine takes them in the opposite direction. When Lan catches up with the group some time later, he reports there are at least 3 fists of Trollocs chasing them, each with a fade in the lead. When a horn winds from the direction they have been traveling, Moiraine knows they have been cut off. The only directions left open to them are north and south. South leads to the river Tarn, which there is no way to cross, but north ends at the Ainil, which may be crossable via boat. Lan tells Moiraine that there is a place where the Trollocs will not go, but she emphatically refuses the suggestion, and the two speak quietly for a while so that none can hear what is said. Eventually, Moiraine leads everyone to the north. Lan puts the horses to a grueling pace through the hilly terrain, but the pursuing Trollocs slowly close the gap. Lan tells everyone that the Trollocs are nearby, and as they crest a hill, they see a halfman leading a group of them up the hill. Telling the group to stay close to him, he leads them into battle crying for the 7 towers. Hearing this, Rand calls out Manetheren. Manetheren! And is soon echoed by Baron. Mat, not to be outdone, shouts Carayan Kaldazar. Carayan Elizand. Elizand. Lan heads directly for the Myrddraal, while the others dive into the Trollocs. The sound of Lan's sword meeting the Myrddraal's blade rings like a great bell and is accompanied by flashes of blue light like lightning. Rand tries to find Egwene in the chaos, and finally spots her near Moiraine. The Aes Sedai is lashing out at the Trollocs, killing them with fire from her staff, even as they try to flee from her. A noose catches Rand and is about to pull him from his saddle when suddenly the pulling stops. Astonished, he looks around him to find all of the Trollocs shrieking because Lan has killed their Myrddraal by severing its head from its body. Tom, however, says it won't truly die until nightfall. Lan shouts at the group to ride on, as there are more Trollocs still, and he doubles the pace he had previously set. Eventually, however, the pursuers again close in until there is only 100 spans between them. Coming down the hill are a host of Trollocs led by 3 Fades. Moiraine climbs down from her horse and stands to face the oncoming horde. Unwrapping her robed woman Angreal, she holds it in one hand and her vine-carved staff in the other, and stabs the staff down into the earth. There is a brief instant of silence, and then the ground begins to shake. The earth trembles in great waves, tossing Trollocs like toys, throwing them into a mass of confusion, but the 3 Myrddraal continue forward, apparently unimpeded. But the Aes Sedai isn't through, yet. She lifts her staff from the ground and points to a hollow between the hills 20 feet high. A fire springs up, then races to left and right for as far as the eye can see, forming a wall between the Dark One's forces and the Aes Sedai's company. After riding a distance away, Moiraine crowds the group together and passes her staff over all of them, creating a false trail for the Trollocs to follow. She then leads them, at Lan's urging, to the ruins of a great city to take shelter for the night. Crumbling and overgrown with vines, Rand thinks it must be 50 times bigger than Baerlon. When Egwene wonders what city it was, Moiraine replies that during the Trolloc Wars it was known as Ireland was an ally of Manetheren. She goes on to say that the city later died and came to be known as Shadar Logoth. Chapter 19, Shadows Waiting. As Rand and his friends make their way into the dead city of Shadar Logoth, They find streets choked with weeds and piles of rubble everywhere, with not a living thing stirring. But the city is yet impressive, even half destroyed, with buildings large enough to dwarf the largest ones in Bayerlan, huge fountains now devoid of water, and massive colossi. Lan chooses a building to make camp in for the night, and instructs Rand, Matt and Perrin to bring the horses inside. As they do so, Nynaeve is rummaging through her sack of herbs for something to give to Moiraine, while Lan cautions her to take careful heed of what she dispenses. When the horses have been seen to, Tom says he's going inside for a smoke, but the boys decide to go out exploring the city, taking the back way out so as not to be stopped by the Aes Sedai or her warder. The three explore the city until the sun is sinking very low, and are just starting to think of going back to the rest of the party, when Matt brings up the subject of finding treasure. When Rand and Perrin express doubt of such things, he says he at least wants to climb one of the towers. At this, a man speaks from behind them, saying that the towers are not safe. The man says his name is Mordeth, and says he has not seen anyone in the city in a very long time. Rand remarks that they are on their way to Caemlyn. Mordeth answers that he has found a considerable amount of treasure, more than he can carry away on his own. He asks if Rand and his friends could help him, in exchange for keeping as much of it as they themselves can carry. Matt quickly agrees, so Rand and Perrin go along. The strange man takes them deep beneath one of the buildings to a room filled with gold, jewels and gem-encrusted objects of every type. Dazzled by the riches, Matt inadvertently reveals that there are other people in the city with them and that they are traveling to Tar Valon. This admission enrages Mordeth, who exclaims that he has been lied to. When Rand suddenly notices that the man is casting no shadow on the walls and comments on it, Mordeth begins to grow until he seems to fill the entire room, reaching out for Rand. Rand and Perrin recoil in horror, scrabbling to free their weapons, while Matt snatches a ruby-hilted dagger from the hoard. Then a scream rends the air, and suddenly Mordeth is normal size again, cowering in a corner. When the three boys realize a trick was being used on them, Mordeth wails that they are all dead, then leaps toward the wall, transforming into a wisp of smoke that vanishes into the cracks in the stone. Perrin and Rand want to leave immediately, but Matt protests that they can't just leave all the treasure behind. So Perrin and Rand each grab one of Matt's arms and haul him bodily toward the stairs, with him shouting all the while about the treasure. When the torches begin to go out, Matt stops shouting, and by the time the group reaches the bottom of the stairs, all of them are running as fast as they can go. When they finally emerge, screaming, into the streets of the city, the sun has more than half disappeared behind the horizon. At first, they feel relieved to be out of the building, thinking they are safe. But then they begin to sense eyes watching them from the ruins lining the street. Fearfully, they decide to go as quickly as possible back to the others, staying in the middle of the street as much as possible. Bursting back into the room Lan had chosen earlier, the three are confronted by Moiraine, who demands an explanation of what has happened to them. When she hears the name Mordeth, Moiraine questions them more closely. She wants to know if the man gave them anything or if they did anything for him. Rand assures her none of those things happened. In response to a question from Egwene, Moiraine then tells them a little of the history of Errol, the city that became Shadar Logoth. She assures everyone that neither Mordeth nor any other evil that inhabits the city can cross the wards she has set around their resting place. Lan has gone out scouting, but everyone else tries to get some sleep. Rand has a strange dream about being a child chased by Mordeth, and an old man watches them, cackling. Returning in the middle of the night, Lan tells Moiraine that there are Trollocs inside the walls, one fist being driven by 4 Myrddrael. Moiraine decides they must leave the city immediately and make for the river Anil. Once there, she plans to set up a ward to hold back the Dark One's forces until they can find a way to cross. Chapter 20, Dust on the Wind. The party make to leave the city quickly, but despite an admonition from Lan to stay close together, The Emmonsfielders and Tom allow their efforts to stay silent and stealthy to cause them to fall a little behind the warder and Moiraine. A tendril of silvery mist drifts across the street between the two groups, and Moiraine halts the slower group just before they would have touched it. As the mist steadily thickens, Moiraine explains that this is Mash-Hadar, the evil of Shadar Logoth, and that its touch is death. Unhappily, the Aes Sedai points out a red star in the sky, telling the group to find another street free of Mash-Hadar's tendrils, leave the city, and follow the star to reach the river Arenil, whereupon she will find them once again. As Moiraine and Lan leave, Rand becomes the unwitting leader of his group, and tries various alternative routes, only to find the mist of Mash-Hadar everywhere, and panic begins to rise amongst the Emmonsfielders. Suddenly, they happen upon a group of Trollocs, and in the chaos that ensues, Tom and the Two Rivers people scatter, each calling for the others to follow them. Pursued by 3 Trollocs and the Fade that drives them, Rand flees down a street lined with Mash-Hadar fog. Left in silence, Rand's fears get the better of him when he spies a dark shadow, and he nearly attacks Mat, who has also managed to evade both Mist and Trollocs. Relieved to be alive, the pair find their way to a gate leading out of the city and reluctantly head out into the dark forest beyond. But just as it seems they have left the horror of the night behind them, Tom rides out of gate behind them at full gallop, shouting "Ride, you fools," as Trollocs pursue him. With just enough warning, Rand and Mat follow him toward the river. When Egwene comes into view he joins her, and soothes her fears about the others by telling her that Moiraine and Lan will look after them. Both head out of the city without incident. But as they head deeper into the surrounding forest, Trollocs once more pick up their scent. Urging them both to greater speed, Beren leads them towards the river, but as Egwene, Onbila, starts to fall behind, more and more of his concentration goes towards watching and encouraging her until abruptly he rides right off the edge of a sheer bluff and into the river below, with Egwene following close behind. Pursued by Trolloc spears, and losing his horse, Egwene, and his cloak to the river, he considers releasing his axe too, but decides to keep it. Beren eventually succeeds in reaching the calm of the other side. He calls out for his friends but receives no reply other than Trolloc shouting from the far side of the river. Rand, Mat, and Tom have evaded their pursuers, but no sooner have they found their bearings than more Trollocs are upon them. An arrow from Mat finds a Trolloc's eye, but it is Tom's knife throwing that takes 2 down and leaves the last running for its fellows. Wasting no time, they soon reach the river bank, but the boys are unsure which way to head, so Tom leads them downriver in the hopes of finding a way to cross. Rand lands on the boat's sleeping sentry, and the man fearfully offers the boat and its contents to the imagined robber before he realizes what is happening. One Trolloc close behind Rand smashes him to the deck with its catchpole and would have succeeded in spearing him with it if not for the extremely lucky intervention of the ship's boom, which while Rand desperately yells no. As Com returns to the boat, the captain appears and reprimands Jelb, the sentry Rand awoke earlier for repeated dereliction of duty. Despite attempting to shift blame to Rand, Jelb is to be put to shore at Whitebridge. The captain, Bail Daman, takes the trio to his cabin for questioning, and Tom spins a tale that explains their situation without giving away their secrets, casting the boys as country louts hoping to become his apprentices. When Daman asks for Tem's sword as payment, Rand objects and before Tom can say otherwise has turned out his pockets for money. The captain takes the only currency of value, the silver coins the boys each received from Moiraine, exchanging them less his payment for passage to Whitebridge and damage to his ship. Rand hopes Daman will look for the other Emmonsfielders, until the captain explains that they have already passed at least 3 or 4 miles from the place where they boarded. Indeed, the captain is reluctant to put to shore any sooner than Whitebridge itself, since he has seen his own share of Trollocs since wintering in Saldia, far to the north. Eventually, Tom leads the boys back up to the deck, still annoyed that they paid for their passage with coin when he could have done so with a few songs and stories. Rand is worried about the others, particularly Egwene, of whom he remembers he promised to take care. Tom tries to reassure him, suggesting that they are probably with Moiraine and Lan by now, and who better, but Rand is still left feeling he should have tried harder. Chapter 21. Listen to the wind. Sunrise finds Nynaeve asleep against a tree in a hollow a little way back from the riverbank. Annoyingly, it seems Moiraine has been right all along. Despite never having been further from Emond's Field than the boys until now, she is willing to head all the way to Tar Valon if she doesn't find her fellow villagers. Not knowing if the camp may hold friend or foe, she approaches as carefully as she can, and soon comes upon the Aes Sedai and her warder. The pair are discussing the disappearance of the nearby Trollocs and the lack of any clear sign of where the Emond's Field boys went, Nynaeve noting Lan's lack of success in that regard as vindication of her own. Moiraine has no good answer, aside from a fervent wish that none of the Forsaken are loose. Of the boys, Moiraine says that one is across river and safe, but the location of the others, while downriver, has faded away due to a bond having been broken. The statement puzzles Nynaeve. Moiraine begins to fret over opposition she may face, not only from the Dark One but from other Aes Sedai of the White Tower, until she suddenly realizes that Nynaeve is watching them, which startles Lan, and beckons her out. Embarrassed, but satisfied that at least the warder was unaware of her presence, Nynaeve emerges and immediately begins to berate Moiraine over her plots to use the Emond's Field boys. The Aes Sedai is nonplussed, enraging Nynaeve, but then drops a bombshell on the wisdom, saying that the only reason she became aware of her presence was because Nynaeve is capable of wielding the One Power herself. Though disbelieving, she is forced to question herself as Moiraine systematically dismantles her flimsy excuses and denials. Moiraine describes how after first using the power, even unknowingly, the channeler will experience a reaction to it, occurring perhaps a week to 10 days after the event. Nynaeve remembers such times clearly. The remembrance shocks her to the core, but still she refuses to believe. Moiraine goes on to describe an affinity that develops between a channeler and a person upon whom they have practiced healing. Nynaeve absently confirms that it was Egwene, disgusted that she herself can touch the true source like a filthy dark friend Aes Sedai. Nynaeve maintains that if she learned to survive the use herself, then Egwene can do the same without it being necessary to take her to Tar Valon. Moiraine disagrees, however, explaining that it is not the reactions to the use of the power, which occur more quickly with each usage until the two occur near simultaneously, then cease, that are a problem, but the fact that 75% of those born with the ability die screaming and convulsing within 2 to 5 years after the last reaction occurs, if they are not found and given proper training. Even if she had not been aware of 2 apprentice wisdoms who died in those circumstances, Nynaeve realizes that the truth can no longer be denied. Moiraine tells Nynaeve that she may have even more potential than Egwene. Both could perhaps be the most powerful Aes Sedai seen in centuries, which nearly pushes the wisdom back into denial. She instead settles for asking Moiraine not to divulge her secret to anyone else. Moiraine nods assent. Nynaeve recalls her initial concern, and demands of Moiraine what she wants with the Emond's Field boys. Moiraine answers that the Dark One wants them, and for that reason, and what better. Moiraine announces their departure to Lan, minus the wisdom. Nynaeve believes the Aes Sedai wishes rid of her, and states her intention to come along. Moiraine considers the other woman's role in the pattern with Lan, and regrets not talking to Min in more detail. Lan seems more diffident and respectful of Nynaeve, even going so far as to call her by name. Nynaeve, already annoyed by the pair's obtuse conversation and lack of explanations, takes the warder's new approach for mockery. He leaves to fetch her horse, and Nynaeve anticipates revenge, imagining him returning empty-handed, having been unable to detect her trail. While the warder is away, Moiraine answers Nynaeve's prodding about their chosen southerly course, explaining the nature of her bond with the boys via the coins she gave to them. As long as the coins are in their possession, she can follow them, and while she can sense a coin across the river to the east, the 2 trails that passed downriver can no longer be detected. Moiraine's apparent lack of interest in Egwene irks Nynaeve, but Moiraine patiently explains that it is the boys that are the Dark One's primary concern. Moiraine's placidity, and her own impotence, nearly overwhelm Nynaeve, and she turns away from the Aes Sedai to cover the tears welling in her eyes. Lan returns with Nynaeve's horse, and is startled and apparently concerned to see her condition as she follows the Aes Sedai and the warder from the forest. Nynaeve's resolve hardens. If Moiraine's plots and plans do not end in them finding the Emond's Fielders all safe and well, then she had best beware of Nynaeve. If she can indeed use the one power, she can use it against Moiraine. Thanks for watching part 3, click here for part 4. For more fantasy book videos, don't forget to leave a like, write down a comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.